the Amberley Council meeting of September 11th. Please call the roll.
Rich Barda. Here. Peg Conway.
Here.
Ed Hattenbach.
Here.
Elise Kamine. Here. Tom Meething.
Here.
Ray Warren. Here. Natalie Wolf.
Here.
Scott Marner.
Here.
Kevin Frank.
Here.
Keith Wallace.
Here.
Rick Peck.
Here. And if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is our minutes from our last meeting of August 14th. The minutes were circulated to all members of council. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Next item is the finance report for July 2017.
Included in your packet, along with the UAN reports, is a summary of our finances for this past month, and I'll primarily be talking about the general fund. The earnings tax, which is the most significant revenue source in our general fund, totaled about $137,000 during the month of July. This is down from July of 2016's collections. We collected about 28% less than last year at this time. The total amount received year-to-date on earnings tax is $1.6 million, and our estimate for the year is a $3 million estimate. The amount of money we received in property tax, we did receive an advance on real estate property tax, the amount of $350,000. And then on the local government fund, we received almost $5,900. So that brings our total revenues for the month of $561,000. And our estimate for the entire general fund revenue is estimated at $4.8 million. And so far, we have collected $3.1 million. So we're about 64% along the way. In regards to the expense side, the village last month was a lower expense month for us, about $206,000 we incurred in expenses. That brings our total expenses year-to-date at $2.5 million, and our budget for 2017 is $4.6 million, so we've spent about 53% of our budget as of the end of July. And that leaves us with an unencumbered general fund balance of $5.7 million. And that concludes the finance report.
Are there any questions for the manager? If not, we will move on to the next item, and we're very fortunate this evening to have Bob Kruger join us. I'm going to step down here. What you want to? Just a couple comments first. Mr. Kruger is the son of the first Amberley police chief, who was William Kruger. And in fact, in the Amberley history book, which was put together as part of the 50th anniversary, there is a complete chapter on Mr. Kruger that is a lot of fun to read. And, you know, one of the things I find interesting is Mr. Kruger was, when he became our first chief, he was uniquely qualified because he was a Hampton County deputy, but he's also a volunteer fireman. And so I think he was involved in the discussions early on that established the idea of having a joint fire and police force. So not only did he do that, but I'm sure he was very instrumental in creating this culture of our police force that we so love here in Amberley. So Mr. Kruger, welcome, and I'll let you give a couple comments about what you want to give to us today.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank Scott. My wife put this together, and we had these mementos in our bedroom, and we have also a painting downstairs. I don't know if you're aware of that. That's good. It's very interesting. Yes, and I remember my mom, my sister, and I. Someday we want that in our room. So when Dad passed away, we looked up there and we said, Carol, do you want that painting? And she says, I don't know if it would fit in our room. And she said, do you want it? I said, you know, it's a little too big. So here it is at Amberley Village. But we had these mementos, and it's it's just a privilege for you people to invite me here. My dad just loved this place. I wouldn't know where to begin. He was so instrumental. I'm blowing a little smoke here on his behalf, but he was so instrumental in forming so many things here. The fire, police department. I think, do you still have the IDs on all the residents that people that are a resident here on the back of their car have? You do have that, well, Dad? And Dad, thank you.
A little bit smaller at times, but we still have.
Okay, I thought that one of the biggest things we had in Amberley is violations go. We had the robberies. You know, I mean, not saying it was prominent, but you know that was some tendency. But the people of Amberley just loved Dad. He was a disciplinarian. He was tough, but the residents just thought the world of him. Dad became very close to all the residents because he loved flowers. And as you know, the beautiful flowers in Amberley Village. So it was a great relationship between the gardener or the lady of the house. So Dad would, and when they would, people would go away to Florida or whatever, it sounds interesting, but I mean, for a chief of police, but one of the residents would call, Bill, we're leaving for Florida next week. Could you make sure my flowers are watered? And so those were the kind of relationships that Dad had here. And I could go on and on because I grew up here in Amberley. When French left his beautiful mansion to the city of Cincinnati, it went into the courts. And of course, my grandfather was the a caretaker. So I spent 7 to 8 years there as a young child, going to St. John's Deer Park, and finally going to Purcell. But I had horses, and I almost owned that 274 acres contiguous to the Roman estate. So that was just a wonderful feeling. Like I said, I know you people got a lot more things to do than listen to me. So I'm not going to say any more. If you have any questions, if not, I almost have a few tears in my eyes because I'm just doing this for my dad. And like I said, he just loved Amberley Village. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming by and everything, and thinking of us. That's just great.
Thank you so much. I might just sit here.
That's great. Again, thank you so much, and thank you for telling the stories. And just as the stories will live on via the book. So thank you, sir. We'll now move on to committee reports. First committee is Streets, Public Utility, and Sewers Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be summarizing the work of the committee over our last two meetings, where we've met on August 7th and September 5th. And I'll start with the items on our agenda that is specific resolutions. The first item speaks to Resolution 2017-27, which is a contract for waste collection and recycling. Committee met on September 5th. Actually, committee met both on August 7th and September 5th to review the waste collection and recycling contract we currently have with Rumpke. We're currently in the last year of a 5-year trash removal contract with Rumpke. This was executed as part of the Center for Local Government. while the CLG requested bids from 3 vendors, only one bid was received, and that was from our current collector, Rumpke. The bid, we received 2 options in this bid, and I'm going to focus on one of the options, okay? And this option is similarly structured to our current contract. That is, we have weekly pickup for both general rubbish and recycling. And this bid calls for a 14% increase from about $12.28 per month to $14 per month. It would be fixed for 3 years. This could be followed with 2 option years, similar structure to what we currently have. And in these last 2 years, there would be an automatic increase of 4% per year. Now, this increase, this 14% increase I just referred to, is entirely due to increased costs associated with recycling. And Rumpke shared that the increased cost is due to several factors, from staff collection time, that is the time to collect the recycling items, to the recycling market that's kind of collapsed over the last couple of years, primarily because of the collapse in energy prices. Rumpke did present an option to us that we could have a recycle pickup every 2 weeks instead of weekly, and that would provide a savings of $2.80 per month. However, we felt that village residents are used to weekly recycling. We're very strong advocates of recycling, participate in recycling, and there could be an administrative challenge from confused residents, certainly in the beginning. At our committee meeting, Mr. Larmer noted that Fairfield and Sharonville have successfully converted to a bi-weekly recycle pickup. Nonetheless, the committee felt that we should pursue the renewal as we currently have, that is weekly pickup for trash and recycling. And so before you is Resolution 2017-27, which is authorizing a 3-year contract with Rumpke.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution or ordinance 2017-27. I first want to say, you first want to make a motion with respect to the ordinance to waive.
This is a
It's actually an ordinance.
this is
The
an
write-up
ordinance.
says resolution, but it's actually an ordinance. I apologize.
Okay, so, yeah, so the first thing we want to do is make a motion to waive the 3 readings of the ordinance 2017-27.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings of ordinance 2017-27. And I just want to add the reason for waiving the 3 readings is because of the contract timing with Rumpke, that this would allow us to put the new contract in place in the ordinary course of business and consistent with when the contract will expire. So it has been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings on ordinance 2017-27. Is there any discussion? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings on ordinance 2017-27. Please call the roll.
Rich Barda. Kate Conway.
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach.
Yes.
Alita Kamine. Yes. Tom Keating.
Yes.
Ray Warren.
Yes.
Natalie Wolf.
Yes.
Yes, now we'll make the motion to pass ordinance 2017-27 to approve, this is the ordinance authorizing the contract with Rumpke for solid waste disposal and recycling services.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2017-27, which would authorize a contract with Rumpke for solid waste disposal and recycling services. Is there any discussion, questions, or comments?
Okay, so this is what I refer to as option 1. So the first 3 years, the fee will be $14 a month, plus there's Cincinnati Waterworks fee on top. I mean, they charge a 5% service charge on top of that. And so it'll be $14 $14 a month, and then the last 2 years, which are options, if we wish to pursue, each year will increase 4%. So it will go from $14 to $14.56 in the first option year. The second option year would be $15.15.
We're doing this with the pool, or like this is part of the...
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this is the agreement, well, this was the bid that was put out by the Center for Local Government, and this is what the Center for Local Government got back from Rumpke.
Yeah, that is correct. There were a group of local governments that went together to bid solid waste. And as we went through the process, every community was experiencing higher recycling costs. And the option from that point was to consider a change in the specifications in terms of our pickup, or do something different with recycling, such as every other week recycling. So some of the communities within this consortium that went out to bid opted to go to every other week recycling and reduce their recycling costs down to about $2.80 a month, as opposed to the $4 per month that's being proposed in this. And I would just point out that the overall increase in this cost is less than $22 a year. So while the percent increase sounds high, it's less than $22 a year for this increased cost for moving up to this next level of Rumpke for the next 3-year period.
Per resident.
Per resident, per household,
So
yes.
the current cost is about $155 a month, current annual cost is about $155, and so this will go up to $176 a year, okay? So that's about
And it's
$2.
worthwhile pointing out, Alita, to your question, it still will be a contract between Amberley and Rumpke. The CLGP is only involved in the bidding process, the actual contract is
Yes.
between Amberley and Rumpke.
Right.
Yeah, so this, and I spoke with Scott about this earlier. This really stood out to me because of the recycling aspect. And I think I want to commend the committee for recommending that council pass this ordinance and with the new contract, even at the increased rate, because Amberley is very civic-minded and we do recycle. But this is something that, going forward in the future, that we're going to have to always be weighing and making sure that we don't, we are not similar to Fairfield, and we're not similar to Sharonville. They are a lot larger. They are not as civically engaged as we are. I would guess that they don't recycle at the rate that we do, and we're really lucky that we have curbside pickup every single week, because there are communities and states that don't even have trash pickup at their home, and they have to haul their own stuff to the dump. And if we didn't offer this weekly curbside recycling, then my fear is that people would not, we'd go backwards. Environmentally, and our recyclables might end up in the trash. That'd be bad for our grant, for Amberley and our high recycling rate, but it would also be bad for the world as well.
I just wanted to inquire, wasn't the most recent contract that's ending, wasn't that actually lower than we were prior? So net increase over the prior contract was, where are we in relation to the previous contract?
Right, so before we entered into this 5-year program with the CLG, and this is, by the way, in our packet, so.
For reference.
Right, sure. So anyway, before we entered into the CLG consortium agreement, our pickup rate was, our annual charge was $161 a year. When we got into the CLG and we got into this first Rumpke contract, that went down from $161 to about $149. And in the current year, it's up about $155. So the current year is still less than what we were paying over 5 years ago. And so, relative to 5-6 years ago, we'll be going from 161 to 176. Anyway, it's $15, $22
But I support it too.
Slices.
I wasn't at any of the meetings, but
Yeah, yeah.
I concur philosophically with continuing the weekly.
I think it really hurts.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, it is been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2017-27. Please call the roll.
Rich Barda. Peg Conway.
Yes.
Ed Hattenbach.
Yes.
Alita Kamine. Yes. Tom Hazen.
Yes.
Ray Warren.
Yes.
Natalie Wolf.
Yes.
The next item is, thank you. Okay, the next item refers to Resolution 2017-28, authorizing the village manager to pursue an Ohio Public Works Commission grant for the reconstruction of North and South Farm Crest Drive. As this committee has shared over the last year or so, previous applications to the Ohio Public Works Commission to replace the concrete streets of South and North Farm Crest and Kincaid failed, in part because of inadequate scoring. The current approach is to apply for funds for Kincaid from the Municipal Road Fund and to submit separate grant applications to the Ohio Public Works Commission for North Farm Crest and separately South Farm Crest. Of the two, Mr. Larmer and Mr. Brown at our Streets Committee meeting noted that based on traffic patterns and street conditions, we think South Farm Crest has a better chance for funding or better score for funding. Now, it's interesting that residents believe that South Farm Crest might be in better condition, but in fact, it's in worse condition because the subsurface is really falling apart. So there are various scenarios in terms of funding possibilities, and that's in our packet here. I'll just briefly go through best case scenario versus worst case scenario. The best case scenario has the village receiving approximately $1 million in grants for all three projects. And the village would also need to contribute almost $500,000 for those projects. But of course, as I said, about over 2/3 of those funds would be coming from other sources. The worst case scenario, assuming the village proceeds with all three projects, I remind you, if we receive one of the grants, we may not go with all three. But anyway, the worst case scenario, assuming the village proceeds with all three street projects, has the village receiving about $400,000 in grants, and the village providing over $1 million for the street repairs. Now, the Kincaid application has already been submitted, and so what's before you is approval for the applications for South and North Farm Crest. That's a summary of what this resolution is about. I make a motion to approve, so I move to make a motion to approve Resolution 2017-28, authorizing the village manager to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and Local Transportation Improvement Programs.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 2017-28 as explained. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 2017-28, which would allow the village manager to prepare the application for the grants as discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that the resolution passes unanimously.
The third item on the agenda is Resolution 2017-29, authorizing agreement with the Center for Local Government to participate in a Public Works Mutual Aid Pact. In the past, the members of the Center for Local Government, which number, in this case, about 26 different municipalities, would provide assistance to each other in the event of an emergency or disaster. For example, we helped the city of Montgomery recover from its tornado a few years back. In an effort to formalize this, provide an inventory of equipment and associated personnel that could be made available from the village or to the village from other members of the CLG, And to facilitate this process, the CLG created this Public Works Mutual Aid contract. So it doesn't really change what we currently do, but essentially formalizes what we currently do. And I think in some respects might improve the efficiency by creating an inventory of all the items that would be available to all the members, theoretically available to all the members. It doesn't change any liability that's associated with our helping other communities, as well as other communities helping us, which I thought was an important point in this agreement. So I move to approve Resolution 2017-29, authorizing the village manager to enter into a Public Works Mutual Aid Pact through the Center for Local Government.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2017-29, which would authorize an agreement with the Center for Local Government to participate in a Public Works Mutual Aid Pact, especially for emergencies. Are there any questions or comments? It's worth noting that, this is equivalent to our mutual aid that we have on the police side and the fire side and everything like that.
It's certainly timely.
So it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2017-29. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that the resolution passes unanimously.
I have two other items I'd like to share. One is having to do with rock salt. We're not going to pass any resolutions or request any funds, which will be the first time in years. So, as many of you know, for the past 2 years, we've experienced exceptionally mild weather. And so, and coupled with the construction of the newly expanded salt facility that is currently at its maximum holding capacity, which is about 1,200 tons, Mr. Larmer and Mr. Chesney shared at our last meeting that we have enough salt on hand to cover the village needs for this winter without having to enter into a new contract. The last bad season that Amberley Village experienced, which used this type of amount of salt, was about 15 years ago, to give you an idea. Now, the current contract still obligates us to purchase an additional 300 tons, which is at about $52 a ton. And we'll have to figure out a way, if we use the 300 tons that we currently have, we'll have a place for it. Otherwise, maintenance will figure out where to put it. But nonetheless, this is going to represent a considerable cost savings to the village, at least one-time cost savings to the village. So I think that's a piece of really good news, great news. The other item I wanted to share is this is something that the Streets Committee's been working on for well over a year. It really had to do with promoting safety, pedestrian safety at the intersection at Section and Elbrook Roads. Some of you know there was a major accident about a year and a half ago in which a pedestrian was almost killed at night. And the pedestrian had the right of way, was wearing a reflector vest, and a motorist, while turning onto Section Road, struck this pedestrian and almost struck a child as well. So the committee started talking about discussing how we might be able to improve pedestrian safety at that intersection. We engaged the police chief, also engaged the village engineer, the CT Consulting, to come up with ways that we could possibly improve that intersection. And essentially, the engineer proposed that the only way to improve the safety of pedestrians at that intersection would be to improve the ability of motorists to see pedestrians. And that would mean the installation of a street light at the corner of Section and Elbrook. And the engineer came up with plans that would basically provide light at that intersection using an LED lamp, which would provide restricted light as opposed to a diffuse halogen lamp. And the engineer also provided plans in terms of where the light would be seen at that intersection. Because one of the things that we were concerned about was, would homeowners at the corner be affected by that light in a negative way? The engineer assured us that if someone sat at their corner window, that they would not be affected by the light. That is, the light would not reach to the structural part of their property. The committee met, and the committee voted to to endorse the installation of these lights. The cost of the light installation will be about $2,500. The annual cost, the electricity cost will be about $300. So it's really a nominal amount. I also went to talk to the owners, the homeowners at the corners, to make sure how they felt, get an assessment about how they felt about the light installation. And all three homeowners endorsed the installation of the lights. In fact, two of the homeowners requested that they be installed in an expeditious manner. And what I learned, and the reason, and that was kind of a surprise, obviously, and what I learned is that two of these homeowners had children, either former or current, had children attending Walnut Hills High School. And it turns out there's a bus pickup at the corner of Section and Elbrook. And these parents were concerned that pickup is at 6:30 in the morning when it's quite dark. And they were concerned that, it was right for an accident, for their children. So certainly, none of the residents were opposed to the lights. All three endorsed it. And so that's what I wanted to provide an update for from the Streets Committee, and so that completes the Streets report.
Okay, we'll now move on to the police and fire.
Okay. The committee met on September 6th to discuss several matters. The first of which is in your packet, Ordinance 2017-09, which would establish an auxiliary unit of part-time officers specifically to handle event details in the village at the JCC or at the synagogues or here at the municipal building. The chief first brought this idea to the committee at our August meeting to let us know he was thinking about this and to begin talking about it. And the reason is the number of detail requests from the various entities have really increased a great deal, and he is regularly having to seek outside resources to come fill them. And he feels, and I think we can all agree, that people in the village like to see Amberley officers at events, and the chief would also like to have consistency among practices and culture among those who are providing this service in the village. So specifically, as outlined in the ordinance, the part-time auxiliary officers would have to have completed police training as required by the state or in a program approved by the state and be state certified. They would also have to complete training in Amberley, including meeting firearms policy and qualification standards. The village will issue a uniform and badge and an ID card, similar to what we saw. Auxiliary officers would have to supply their own gear, such as body armor and leather gear, and their own on-duty weapon, but the weapon would be specified by the village. They will not work road duty or any other roles that are filled by our full-time staff. So I'd like to present for a first reading ordinance number 2017-09, ordinance authorizing the hiring of auxiliary peace officers and establishing the auxiliary police. So we will have the full 3 readings, and the program would be implemented in the beginning of the next budget. We're not moving
This is just
it.
the first reading of the ordinance. Are there any questions or comments from council members for the first reading of this ordinance?
Okay. I have a couple of other updates. At the meeting on September 6th, it was a meeting where the chief was giving us some updates on various items. First being the alarm monitoring. As you know, we have talked several times about the department is working to establish an alarm monitoring arrangement whereby they can accommodate multiple alarm companies. And to that end, equipment was purchased and has been tested. But as they drill down into it, they have encountered a snag of an administrative sort due to language in typical alarm company agreements that could potentially open us to some liability. And they are working with the law director to find a solution and will continue to update us, but it's looking more like beginning of the year in order to implement the alarm monitoring expansion. And then with regards to the 911 system, the chief provided information on potential legislation at the state level that would impact our ability to have a 911 system, for example, if 2 dispatchers were required at all times. These kinds of changes have been under consideration for quite a while, and he will continue to monitor it, and he communicates with other jurisdictions and state legislators, and so we'll stay informed about that. Also in regard to the 911 system, someone had posed a question after the reports in the media about dropped 911 calls or missed 911 calls in the city of Cincinnati, and he assured us that Amberley has not experienced missed calls. Our volume is very low relative to the total capacity of the system, And Cincinnati Bell has to make updates, and sometimes that creates interruptions, but that has not affected us. So finally, beyond our meetings, I attended today the Beyond the Call Awards ceremony at Cincinnati Christian University, where the chief received an honorable mention in the community service and problem-solving category. On this 9/11 anniversary and in the wake of the hurricanes, it was really an inspiring reflection on the role of first responders and their presence every day in the ordinary emergencies and super emergencies like a hurricane or a terror attack, and how it really boils down to we're really glad to see them in those moments. And always in the village, we are fortunate to have Chief Wallace. I think it's noteworthy that he was nominated by 2 of his colleagues, and I think it's also noteworthy that he's really following in the footsteps of Chief Kruger. I reread the whole excerpt in the book that was provided with our council packet, and it noted that he visited at one time, he visited all the residents, all 600 households at the time. And this is what I want to share a short excerpt from the nomination letter prepared by Lieutenant Bloom and Anna Shaw, Administrative Assistant. Chief Wallace is a hard man to put into words. To have met the chief is to have engaged with a man passionate about his career and passionate about the safety of his community and its residents. Chief Wallace cares deeply about the communities in which he lives and serves. The chief notoriously will drop what he is doing to come to the mutual aid of another department or the assistance of a resident in need. Chief Wallace interacts with the community not only on a personal level, but in an ever-evolving world, has committed himself to keeping residents up to date via social media during all hours of the day and night. The chief maintains an active presence on Facebook as well as Nextdoor, and routinely makes residents aware of both emergency and non-emergency situations. Residents freely correspond with the chief on both platforms and have repeatedly remarked on how much they appreciate all he and his department do for the community. It's delightful to watch the chief work and a privilege to work alongside a commander who ensures no group or individual in Amberley is left behind. So, congratulations and thank you, Chief Wallace. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions? If not, we will move on to the compensation and benefits.
That's kind of a tough act to follow out there. That's not really very fair.
You have very good news to deliver.
That's true. So congratulations, Chief. Okay, so I'll make it short. That's the good news. So as you recall, every year we get an update from the local Center for Local Government Benefit Pool. We participate with one of 17 communities that pool together for our employee benefits to get the best rates on our health care, and it is good news this year. We ended the year that ended July 31st with an ending reserve balance of over $1.9 million, which is well above the kind of target 1.4 million where we were last year, and also the target for where we need to be in order to keep reserves for the future. And we had an update from our representative, Mark Schlagcheck. Schlag is close enough. So we're in very good shape, and we went through a lot of the specifics in the committee meeting about all kinds of claims are down, especially our very large claims are down. So I guess as a pool, we have healthier employees overall. But as a result of this, we were also able to, if you recall, we had a smaller increase this year in terms of our healthcare costs than we had anticipated that we were going to have in terms of both the village's contribution and the employee contribution as a result of that. So it's all good news, and we hopefully will stay on that good trajectory.
Any questions? If not, we will move on. I assume that. We'll now move on to health education and welfare.
Thank you. Well, the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee we met just before this meeting, in fact, but not presenting any ordinance or any action. But I wanted to give an update, brief update about what the committee has been working on in regards to the non-discrimination ordinance. So a lot of work has been done. Our solicitor, Kevin, and Alana Jochum, who's the Executive Director of Equality Ohio, and also an attorney, have been working on a draft ordinance, and we had a really pretty informative and active meeting, well attended. It's good to point out that now and as was pointed out to us, it's 2017, and there are no fully inclusive protections at state or federal level for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer individuals in commerce, housing, and public facilities. And this is despite the fact, and surprisingly despite the fact that we have marriage equality at federal and state law, and yet it is still permissible to discriminate in housing and commerce and in public facilities against this class of individuals. So Amberley, being as diverse as it is, in really in every respect, religion, race, gender, you name it, Amberley probably has it. So we are a sort of an obvious community to, pass an ordinance like this. Currently, there are 19 cities in Ohio that have passed non-discrimination laws, which covers 21% of the population in Ohio. So where we left it, the committee had a lot of questions, and they are still submitting questions. Anyway, in fact, I want to open it to the community. If anyone has any questions about what this will cover and what's protected, please send email. You can send emails to me or send emails to the manager or the mayor, and we'll hope to get those answered for you. But we definitely don't want this to be a secret process. It's something that I think that we're proud to be working on, and would like everybody to be engaged and know about it. So that concludes my portion of the report, and I think Ray has something that he wanted to add.
First of all, I want to thank the chair, Councilperson Wolf, for really spearheading this whole modification to our ordinances and laws regarding discrimination. I think it's very, very important. And in fact, in the spirit of non-discrimination and inclusiveness and diversity, I wanted to share some thoughts regarding the Charlottesville, Virginia Unite the Right March that occurred about 3-4 weeks ago, after our last council meeting. On Tuesday, August 15th, I was watching President Trump's news conference. I thought that after his last tweet condemning Nazis and the Klan, the episode of Charlottesville, Virginia was behind us. But what I saw sickened me. President Trump was doubling down on his earlier tweet condemning all sides of the violence that occurred on Saturday, claiming there were good and bad people on both sides. Somehow the equivalence did not sit well. While President Trump claimed the organized demonstration was about the disposition of a Confederate statue, Robert E. Lee, the fact is this wasn't about the Confederacy. The organizer of the Unite the Right rally, Jason Kessler, is the founder of a group, United in Security for America, a white nativist nationalist group. Like many white nationalists, he has a long arrest record, an outcast, a loser. Within the Unity and Security for America group, he developed his theory of white threat in America as cultural Marxism, how Holocaust survivors seek to erode Western values through cultural influence. I imagine with the decline of survivors, this is now directed towards second generation. Kessler has endorsed pro-Confederate candidates for political office and has associated with the League of the South, a neo-Confederate hate group that seeks to establish a theocratic white nationalist state in the South. Of course, the Unite the Right attracts rubbish, such as the Ku Klux Klan, the Vanguard, and other white trash. On Friday night, before the fatal murder of a counter-protester, there was a white supremacist torchlight rally on the University of Virginia campus, reminiscent of older Klan days. Students against the rally had surrounded the statue of Thomas Jefferson when they heard shouts of the approaching torch-bearing white nationalists shouting, "Jews will not replace us, white lives matter, Sieg Heil, and blood and soil," a common Nazi refrain referring to racial purity, all while giving the Nazi salute. This was not about supporting the Confederacy or freedom of speech. Who are the so-called good people supporting Kessler? This rally was about promoting terror, period. There were good and bad people in the counter-protest on Saturday, but they wouldn't have been there had the white supremacists not been given a permit. We fought a war 70 years ago to stop Nazism in its path. Nazism was the antithesis of all the good that America stands for. To quote Senator Orrin Hatch, "My brother didn't give his life fighting Hitler for Nazi ideas to go unchallenged here at home." Is Senator Hatch a bad person? It's too bad President Trump doesn't get white terrorism, or worse, feels a need for their support. Unfortunately, President Trump's behavior somehow mirrors our last president. After all, President Obama refused to call what happened at Fort Hood an act of Islamic terrorism. At least President Obama was smart enough not to refer to good soldiers and bad soldiers at Fort Hood. This episode strikes me as an opportunity to rebuild and strengthen bridges across all minorities and across all freedom-loving people. All of us were targets and victims at Charlottesville. What President Trump has resuscitated is dormant racism in this country that can be traced to the Civil War. Praising Confederate monuments erected in the 1920s by the Daughters of the Confederacy, coincident with the height of Klan activity, is reprehensible. It's certainly not a way to unite this fractured country and move to an enlightened era. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Vice Mayor or Councilman Warren? If not, we'll move on to the Land Development Committee. And as Chair of the Land Development Committee, I'll present the report. As you recall at the last meeting, we approved the manager to enter into a easement contract with Duke for the provision of electric services to the new Mercy Medical Office building. And this evening, we're considering easements related to gas services to the building and for sewer services. As I explained at the last meeting, these easements are in the ordinary course of business. The Land Development Committee met on September 6th to review these easements. The manager explained how the easements would run. In the case of the gas easement, the gas line actually comes into via the service, down the service line. The county will actually have to also grant an easement because the county owns the property right at the beginning of the service drive, and then we will grant an easement to bring the gas line the rest of the way in, be able to provide gas services to the medical office building. So I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2017-30, which would authorize easements to Duke Energy for the gas line and to the Metropolitan Sewer District for utility services to the Mercy Medical Office. It's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2017-30. Is there some confusion?
The question about who the easement's going to on the second one, not the Duke, but the MSD.
That's what it said.
So the lessee of the Mercy property is DBS Ridge Road LLC or something like that. It's basically Sherman Properties, but they created a separate LLC for the lease, so that's who the lease should go to. I had a conversation with Wes Brown, the Public Works Supervisor. While we were creating this, there was some confusion whether it was MSD or DBS, the tenant. I just want to make it clear, I think it should be the tenant.
And I will revise my resolution, which would hopefully cover either one. I hereby ask the council to approve Resolution 2017-30, which would authorize easements to Duke Energy in the case of gas. And in the case of the sewer lines, it will either be MSD or the lessee of the property, and we authorize the village manager to determine who the appropriate party is and to put that easement in place.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2017-30. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2017-30. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Be it noted that the resolution passes unanimously. And that concludes the land development.
One comment, that building's looking pretty.
Yeah, I mean, it is very impressive how quick the building's gone up as those that attended the groundbreaking back in April. I, in fact, asked the contractor building the building, I said, you really think you're going to have this available in December? And they said it with a lot of confidence. And so, again, it's great news for the village. It is a very attractive building, and it is going to provide additional revenue to the village, so it's good news all around. And, you know, I think...
And services.
You know, I think, again, as we all recall, back at the end of 2016, a great amount of work and that both Kevin and Scott put in to make sure that this lease was in place and that everything was able to be done on a timely basis. And in fact, the interesting thing I still remember is that Ken Sherman, who, you know, obviously is on the private side, was shocked that Amberley was able to move much faster than, in fact, the people on the private side were able to move. So, again, I will always remember that all that effort put in place to increase our revenues, so thanks again. We'll now move on to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I had two items I wanted to mention this evening, brush and leaf collection. We are coming to that point in the calendar where we need to suspend the collection of brush pickup. So the last week for residents for brush pickup will be that first week of October. So October 2nd through October the 6th will be our last week of brush collection. We will take 1 week to try to catch up on other projects and get in preparation for leaf collection, which will begin on October the 16th. So residents will receive a call safe message reminding them about the last week to put out brush, letting them know that the leaf collection will begin on October the 16th. And the second item I wanted to cover was in regards to a meeting that staff held last month with Duke officials in regards to some of the concerns that residents have expressed, as well as council, in regards to Duke's report of outages and how they respond to our residents. This was a very helpful meeting. There were, I would say, about 5 key points that came out of the meeting. And what we will do with this information is feed that out to the residents via the newsletter and other outlets so that we can help Duke do their job, and it helps the village as well. But the first item is to report all outages to Duke. I think there is some concern that, or some apathy that it doesn't matter if you call Duke or not. They do want to know. They do need to have a physical call or an email alert or something like that to let them know that the electric is out at your house. Now, they can tell you that your electric is out because they have a smart meter system, but they really do need to hear it from residents that the electric is out. So they want it to be reported. That's very valuable for them to receive that information. So don't ever think that my neighbor's probably already called. Go ahead and make that call to Duke. I would just point out that Duke does offer both phone and email alerts so that you can interact with them. So you can go to their Duke Energy website and you can sign up for that kind of a communication tool. The second item that we learned is that the circuits that are within the village, it's not simple. So a particular street that might go out first and then across the street the power doesn't go out, it's not like what you would think it would be. It is not a systematic system where everybody is on the same grid or served by a same substation. It is very complicated. It's not a matter of just everybody coming on or going off at the same time. So it's hard, I think, to refrain from judgment when you see your neighbor's electric come on and yours doesn't come on. You think somebody's out to get you. There's something going on. That's not the case. The third point is that vegetation is typically the cause of outages. 99% of the time, it's related to vegetation. So this is typically a tree that is touching an electric line, and with the number of dead ash trees throughout this area, that's part of the issue. But any contact with trees is going to cause an outage. So Duke they have a vegetation management policy, and they strongly encourage that trees stay out of the clear of any kind of electrical line. Now, obviously, they don't want residents trimming near electric lines, but think in terms of when you plant trees or when you have your trees trimmed by a contractor to make sure that you allow adequate space so that if that tree should fall, if there should be damage to that tree, that it's not going to come down onto an electrical line. The fourth point is that here in the village, we have a lot of rear lines. So, for example, on Elbrook, we have electric lines that are in the backyards of residents. And that is problematic. While it's aesthetically pleasing because it's not out of the street, it is a problem for Duke to get back there and not only maintain the vegetation on those lines, but also to respond when there is an outage. So that makes their work even more difficult, because if it was out on the street, they could pull up and take care of a particular transformer. When it's in the back, obviously there are access issues and it's not as simple. So that does make it more problematic to access and to repair any kind of outages. And then the last point that we came away from was that Duke does have a smart grid system here throughout the greater Cincinnati area. They implemented that several years ago, but they are continuing to upgrade it and to integrate it into a full system. And they did announce that there is a part of the village has been upgraded, and there's another part of the village that has not been upgraded, but that is in their plans for 2018. So from a staff standpoint, it was refreshing to me to know that there was investment being made, and they are aware, that the Duke is aware that they have issues. It's not a perfect system, but they're continuing to invest in the system to try to make it better. Our commitment back to Duke was that we would try to communicate this information and pass this along and be helpful for them as they do their jobs, and likewise, they could continue that level of communication with us. So I thought it was a very valuable meeting. There were other parts of the conversation that were relevant, but I think it's a matter of working through some of those issues so that we understand in terms of reporting outages, and when that information comes back, when Duke responds, how all that gets transpired is something that we will continue to focus on with Duke.
What exactly does it mean to have a smart grid? Does that mean they can see remotely, immediately where problems are, or?
A smart grid is somewhat of a redundant system. So when the electric goes out on Spring Valley, there is a smart grid system that, and this is theoretical on my part, that on Fairhaven, the Fairhaven could take over the Spring Valley system. So a smart grid isolates it down to a particular neighborhood or a street so that the entire village doesn't go out when one transformer blows. So it tries to narrow it down to a particular area. A smart grid system allows them to communicate back and forth. They can see that kind of a system, but also gives them a redundant system so that not everybody suffers when there is an outage. And not everybody is on that smart grid system, and that's part of the problem. That's why they are investing, because they are trying to decentralize part of those areas in order to improve or sectionalize it so that it becomes better for them and for our residents.
Other questions? I mean,
that concludes my report.
Chief's report?
Yeah, I just had a few items I'm going to go over. And the first is we had an auto accident on Fair Oaks the other day, on Friday. I think you were made aware of it through the manager. It was a child was on a scooter, went into the roadway without looking, and then a driver that also lived in the same neighborhood struck the child. The child spent the night in the hospital, minor injuries, but it was no fault of the driver. It was just a pure accident. But I did speak to the driver of the car today, just kind of check on her, as well as I spoke to the child that was struck and his parents. Everything's good there. That was like a 4:28, then at 5:21 the same day is when we had the large explosion up at French Park. What it was is they transported a large grill up there for a wedding. It had four additional propane tanks on there, but they decided to take a fifth one. They slid it underneath the grill. When the grill was lit, the propane tank was not removed. It blew off the gas valve. At that time, one of our officers just happened to be driving up the street, just circled the house. They flagged him down, said the grill was on fire. He gets out of the car. No sooner than he gets out of the car, the propane cylinder itself exploded, blowing debris probably 60 to 100 feet away from the grill. The lucky thing that no one was injured. It was there's some very large pieces that were thrown, and parts of was actually caught on the in-car camera, so you could see the debris flying. The officer actually went underneath the car when it happened because he'd seen the debris flying. So as a result, there was no one injured, and we had a great response from Deer Park Silverton. Also responded with our department, as well as Gulf Manor, and the city also dispatched their fire department, as the officer up there was a Cincinnati police officer working the detail and called for Cincinnati to respond. So everything worked out well on that. The other thing was, if you notice, I added a couple speed signs on Section Road. They're solar speed signs. Those are the new ones we recently purchased. The older ones are going to continue to be moved out throughout the village. The ones on Section are solar. We're going to leave them in place longer periods at a time. We chose that area because of the high pedestrian traffic by CZE. That one will cover the eastbound traffic. Then we put one at Aracoma to cover the westbound traffic. Seem to be doing good, and we'll be able to pull the data off that sometime down the road. Concludes my report.
Questions for the chief? Now we'll move on to the mayor's report. And I just first want to comment on some upcoming dates or events. Tomorrow evening is the Hands Around the School at Pleasant Ridge Montessori. Pleasant Ridge Montessori, our community school, has tried to have various community events. In this case, they're trying to encourage the community to come up to the school, and their goal is to have enough people attend that to be able to hold hands and get completely around the school. So again, I encourage council members and other members of the community to attend. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 up at Pleasant Ridge Montessori. Next, we have an environmental stewardship committee meeting 2 weeks from this evening at 7 p.m. down in the community room. This will be did not have a, we did have an August meeting, we did not have a July meeting. We tend to, I think we're going to have 8 total meetings of the environmental stewardship committee this year. But this will be a meeting, and if people want to attend, it's a great opportunity to hear about what's going on in this committee. It's open to everyone. The Environmental Stewardship Committee also hosts Clean the Green. This again is an attempt because the village doesn't have the resources to do some minor maintenance around the trees up the green. The Environmental Stewardship Committee has stepped in, and there's another Clean the Green event on September 28th at 5:30. Again, anybody interested in getting a little exercise and doing some light maintenance on the trees up the green are more than welcome. We tend to meet in the parking lot around 5:30 and just go out and do some light maintenance. The Environmental Stewardship Committee will also be hosting a tree walk here on the property. There was a tree walk a few years ago down at the green. This year it's going to be on this property. We're currently working on the date. It probably will be October 22nd, but watch for the final date on the website. And then that concludes as far as upcoming events. I did also want to thank Amy Rubenstein, who has done a yeoman's job for a number of years, putting everything together for our annual ice cream social. Amy, along with the chief and the whole police department, does a great job putting on the event, and Amy did a great job again this year. So I just want to thank her. And then finally, at the last meeting, I did ask for nominees to the LSMDC, which stands for Local School Management Decision Committee. Whatever. And we, as one of the communities that is one of the communities served by Pleasant Ridge Montessori, we are asked to, or we get to nominate someone for the committee. We were seeking nominations. We're still working on that, so we're going to do that in October. But again, if you have great candidates that come to mind, let me know, and we will come up with a process so that we have a nomination for that committee at the next meeting. And with that, that concludes my report. Are there any questions? We will now move on to new business.
Thank you. I have three quick things. So first of all, it's election season. So this is a save the date. We'll have another meeting before, with more details before the event, but another event to announce on October 19th, Thursday, October 19th. We're planning the Women's Forum is coming back together, but it's open for everybody. It's for men, women, everybody, for school board candidates. So as the mayor mentioned, we're in Cincinnati Public Schools, and there are, I think, a dozen candidates running for 4 open seats for the school board this year, and there's some open seats, so it's going to be kind of a hot race that they have. And the Women's Forum is planning kind of a candidate forum in the community room, not sponsored by the Women's Forum. And so we'll have more information about that, but just wanted to save the date for the October 19th. Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
She signed up via Robin, and you told her why.
Yeah.
It's educational, it's not
It's
political.
yeah, it's educational. It's not a political. We can, okay, well, we can talk about
We may
location
be-
TBD.
we may be relocating.
Location TBD, but the date, save that date. It is the 19th of October, yeah,
At
for sure.
Peg's house.
For sure. No. We'll definitely do it. We'll definitely do that. Okay. So the second thing is, and I think Natalie has the paper out about this, but I saw there have been, and I don't mean to steal your thunder here, but there have been a bunch of, just really in the good news department, every time you pick up a newspaper for any of the community awards right now, whether it's, I saw Leadership Cincinnati, 40 under 40, Women of the
40
Year.
under 40 right here.
Well, I think there's 3 or 4 total, but this is, you have the latest one, which was Women of the Year, and this one was particularly exceptional because it was 20% of the list of Amberley people. So our residents are extraordinary, and just wanted to congratulate them. I don't know if you wanted to talk about people there that you, yeah. So congratulations to Sandy Kaltman and Karen Bankston, who were 40 under, or to Women of the Year. And then also just wanted to wish happy holidays to, high holidays to all of our Jewish residents.
Okay, well, Alita already has, stolen my thunder, but as I said before, we are very civic-minded in Amberley. We've had Women of the Year nominees before, pretty much every year. This year we have 2 out of the 10. So, right, Karen Bankston and Sandy Kaltman. And, of course, I don't think we ever recognized Lita, our own 40 under 40 nominee this year. So, great. That's really great. I'm very proud. The only other thing I wanted to commend Nicole and the staff and everyone who puts together the e-news, the integrated video clips really are helpful, and I clicked on the leaf removal, and I noticed it has over 3,000 views, so good job.
Any other new business? If not, we consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.